Welcome to another episode of Is It Bad for the Economy? My name's Kobi. I'm the Democratic strategist and host, trying to figure out how the Democrats can finally get the credit they deserve for outperforming Republicans on the economy for my entire lifetime. And I'm being kept honest by the anonymous banker Bill, who's doing some fantastic work at a bank you've definitely heard of. And today, as always, we're exploring whether Trump's economic policies are helping, hurting, or just a load of hot air. Folks, we promised you an episode on New York housing. Unfortunately, that's getting rescheduled to next episode. Me personally, I'm just proud that none of those scheduling snafus were my fault for once. But that gives us a chance to catch up on the big news that dropped right before we dropped our last episode, the Iran war. Unfortunately, he made a little bit of a fool of banker Bill, who gave Trump a lot of credit for energy production and low energy prices and selling high and buying low on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I'll give banker Bill a chance to defend himself there. But as far as I'm concerned, Trump's the one who looks foolish for taking, once again, his only wins off the board.
I to defend myself from what? I mean, I take the punches when they come. I said what I said. Unforced error. It's always as soon as they get close to 2% inflation, he has to do something, it seems, to make the inflation go right back up or create a new problem. So even when you prompted me to give him a one up, something that was successful, what's he do? He slaps me across the face.
Well, I hope that 2% comment is just a joke, because as you know, I care very deeply about getting back to that 2% inflation target. But I do also have to give you some credit, because a judge dropped the investigation into Jerome Powell this week. You'd been saying this entire time, this is a nothing burger of a story. Trump's going to make some noise. It's not going to go anywhere because the accusations could not be more flimsy. And again, this is a spat about interior design, not about insider trading, not about money laundering, about interior design. And I got to say, not only did this not help Trump in the way that I thought in terms of giving him leverage, putting a little fear of God into the Fed governors, it even hurt him. This means now that he's not going to get his first choice for the Fed chair governor. He's had to nominate his number two, Kevin.
Who was the number one? Oh, you think it was Hassett?
Hassett, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, I think this was a Friday news dump where they came, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney for D.C., came out and said that they were dropping it, right? And it wouldn't have been a story at all had she not kind of made a fool of herself, acting the way she did in the afternoon, lashing out at some people. But to me, this was always coming. This is always where we were going to wind up. And now that creates the opportunity for Warsh to probably be nominated, assuming Tillis keeps to his word. This is the first checkbox to go away, right? The Powell investigation or grand jury subpoena, that's now done. And now we're just hanging on for the Lisa Cook thing to finish out. So you'd expect if that goes away too, which is already being litigated in court, Warsh is probably nominated and confirmed by May.
Just to recap there briefly, Republican Senator Tillis had made a strong stand in defense of Powell and Fed Governor Lisa Cook, who also has been accused of some complete nonsense real estate stuff that's also totally flimsy and made up. But to his credit, Republican Senator Tillis had said that he would not move forward with the Fed chair nominee until these two legal matters had been resolved. The big one has been resolved. Got to give Tillis some credit. He's been, 10 toes down on this one. I do wonder just a little bit if he's going to be as committed now that the big one is out of the way. Powell.
Doesn't he have to be? Because this one is actually in court.
You're right. I shouldn't be so cynical. I shouldn't be so sarcastic. You're absolutely right. But there is one other big question when it comes to Warsh's nomination, and that's this really unflattering appearance in the Epstein files, looking like he's celebrating the Christmas holidays with Epstein near Epstein's Island, not necessarily on Epstein's Island, with a lot of heavy hitters, and with a blackout name right next to his on sort of the guest registry. We can link to it in the show notes. This is 100% verifiable DOJ file. And it also must be said that the redacted name next to Kevin Warsh's, the person that he was staying with, now we know that the DOJ was overjudicious in its censorship of names. This could be his wife. This could just be one of those cases where they just generically blacked out a woman's name. But those questions need to be asked, whether it's by Tillis or somebody else or by the media. We haven't heard much about it now. I'm hoping that's just because everybody's keeping their powder dry for when it's time for the hearings, when it's time to vote on his nomination. And then the other question that Banker Bill, you've been asking this entire time, does Powell go softly into that old night? Does he simply resign as is tradition, as Fed chairs normally do, or does he continue to sit out his Fed governor position? Basically, he could go back to being a non-Fed chair. It's as if the Supreme Court justice could go back to being just a normal Supreme Court justice. Do you still think that's in play, or have things settled down enough now that you think that Powell is going to retire?
Yeah, I think now he'd probably the way they could always change, subject to what happens tomorrow morning. Who knows? But I think at this point, assuming Warsh is out of committee by April, I would expect that Powell, upon confirmation, would resign.
Just the last bit of economic news that I do want to touch on briefly. We had another really bad jobs report, and now since Liberation Day, the economy has on aggregate lost 19,000 jobs. It's like you've been saying, this is a job market that continues to weaken, but won't quite break.
Yeah, I mean, we covered it in the comments about the State of the Union speech, where over the last few months, unemployment has come down, but it's still higher than it was, a year ago. A year ago in February. Oh, no, U6 was 8% in February last year, and we're 7.9% now. So holding steady versus a year ago. We'll see.
Well, I think that gets us to the biggest topic of the day,
Yes.
of course, is the Iran war. This conflict, whatever you want to call it, has so many economic wrinkles and elements to it. In some ways, it seems like Iran's strategy is based on pushing all of the economic buttons that are related to this. I think if you're listening to this podcast, you've learned a lot about the Strait of Hormuz, about the Middle Eastern oil producers in the last couple of weeks. I don't want us to do a play-by-play of the last 2 weeks, but I think there are two questions that we need to ask. If this were to end today, if Trump were to wake up today and get some sort of deal done with the Iranians, the economic effects of this, the pain, the pressure would not go away immediately. So Banker Bill, if this were to end today, how long would we continue to experience these higher gas prices? And how long would it take for the economic knockoff effects, like the food prices going up because of diesel that we're hearing so much about? How long would it take for that to work its way through the economy?
It would be months. Months. I mean, even if it ended today, now I think these prices at the pump are about what they're going to be probably through the summer driving season. Even if it ended today, maybe the throughput on grocery prices will take a little bit longer, but a lot of that's coming into harvest right now for season or planting season now with the summer grow season. But I mean, the cost of fertilizer has gone up significantly because of the cost of oil. So that's a double whammy, not just the transportation on the foodstuffs. But if it ended today, 3 months to 6 months on the gas prices.
And is the gas prices and the small increase we're expecting on other goods across the board, is that the worst of this if this were to end today? Or is
no, just the longer it goes, the more the pressure builds. And if we're sitting in this position where there's 8 ships going through the Strait of Hormuz a day instead of the typical 100 or so, then that's going to put pressure on prices throughout the summer. And the worst case scenario, the oh shit moment for me would be if oil hit 160 a barrel. That would be blow off, break glass moment. I'm not taking any position on oil prices, but they could certainly go higher from here. Unless it reopens, the pressure on supply is only going to increase. And with it, prices. Simple.
So if this does keep going, is this oil price really the worst case or the worst thing that's going to hurt us? Or are some of these financial knockoff effects that we're hearing a little bit about the mortgage prices going up, stuff like that? Do you think that there is sort of pain on another scale coming, or is this really just all about prices?
I think that this level of increase, right, to go from 65 to 100 in a month is going to put significant strain on companies. And in 3 to 6 months' time at this level, with that fast of a move, it could push some companies to the brink, right? A borderline bankruptcy. The problem is the price of oil, energy prices are an input for everything else, for the cost of everything else. So I mean, that's the greatest challenge. I'll give you what it looks like in a household scenario. You have a set number of dollars. More of those dollars now go to gasoline than it did, say, a month ago. So if you're the number one selling car in the United States is the Ford F-150. They sell 800,000 of those a year. 36-gallon gas tank, I think. A month ago, you were paying $96 for a tank of gas. Now it's 106. So if you are a tank a week driver, that's an increase of $40 a month until further notice. Typical household, say they make $100,000 a year. That's a little bit more than the median, right? But the F-150, say it's a nice truck. That increase in gas prices is 5% of your total income. Immediate impact. What's 5% of your total income for that household? Typically, their savings rate is 5%. So there goes the savings rate. Poof. That's that. So a short-term oil shock like this increases energy prices, which typically has the effect of a tax hike because you spend more on energy and food and less on everything else.
You said that 160 for oil was the oh shit moment, is the moment at which this economic pain is going to get really bad. Is there a duration? If we keep seeing the markets figure out how to keep the price of oil between 80 and 120, is there a time limit at which an oh shit trigger happens anyway? 6 months, 8 months, a year?
That would be based on demand, right? But you're not going to get a significant increase in demand or growth because it's going to be impacted by a lack of supply for oil, especially in Asia. But in the intermediate term, the next 3 to 6 months, the worst is yet to come because you have this supply constraint now, a new supply constraint with the typical summer demand. You are in a weak seasonal period right now for oil demand. Oil demand is going to spike into the summer. If these supply constraints are into the summer, what's going to happen is prices will increase further. There's your oh shit 160.
And that worst is yet to come. That's the part that's already baked in. That's the part.
Yes, that's coming. That's near-term demand. I mean, there's flights that are booked, right? There's trips that are paid for.
I don't think you're going to want to give me a straight answer on this. But is there a recession, a depression point? Is there a point where this is more than just a price spike?
Yes, this kind of a shock could cause a recession. You just went from 65 to 100 in a month. And if it goes higher, say it goes to where the high was 2021, 115, 120. Again, you're going to be talking $4 or $5 gas. Was 2022 a fun time? No. Market fell 20 odd percent. All the recession fears, everybody was talking about that.
So rising prices, employment situation going slightly south. Are we back on stagflation watch?
Yes. And you said it, not me this time. I didn't even have to highlight it because it's so obvious.
If you could just give our listeners a quick recap of stagflation and why it's such a bad thing.
Stagflation, low growth, high price. Why is that a problem? Because as demand falls, you would expect prices to fall with it. Instead, what happens is demand falls and prices either stay where they are or, in fact, rise. Doubly bad. Why is demand going down? Because you don't have money.
And again, just the point of this that is so infuriating, this didn't need to happen.
Completely manufactured, Kobi.
This is Trump just taking the strengths that are in the economy off the board.
They built up to this, though, over months, right? They have 2 aircraft carriers there, and they went through it all with the buildup, and now we're like stuck with it.
I really don't want to speculate on the national security, on the military, on the international part of this. But just to say, I don't see an off-ramp here that makes it like this never even happened.
And not for oil prices. You don't see it in the chart. Yeah, they came back down, the futures. You want to cover that?
There was this weird narrative that's coming out about the market manipulation. On Monday, I should start. Last Sunday, everybody was talking about how the markets were going to open up way down, and it was finally going to be that bad trading day that we've all been waiting for since Liberation Day. It was bad, not quite as bad as expected. Trump came out and basically said, war's over. Everybody calmed down. And then the second the markets closed, Trump doubled down on the aggression, vowed to go more shock and awe, and all of a sudden the war was back on again. Then on Tuesday, all of a sudden you had the energy secretary tweeting that a ship had been successfully escorted through the Strait of Hormuz by the U.S. Navy. For 10 minutes, the markets went crazy, but actually just only after 3 minutes, that tweet was deleted. It feels like there is some sort of manipulation happening here where Trump is structuring the way in which he communicates about this war, not for maximum national security, military victory, not to generate buy-in from the American people and to generate trust and transparency with the American people, but simply to mitigate the economic damage. That doesn't feel sustainable. How long can they keep doing this, Banker Bill? Aren't we just one more Trump announcement away from saying he's the boy who cried wolf and this is going just as poorly as we're all worried it is?
Yeah, I think the market's already showing us that it's going against the actions of the administration. So since the oil pop and top and then retrace right back down, the trend has been back higher towards the initial pop in oil over 100. So that's the market telling you that they don't think the USA is in charge of the oil prices. The trend is going the wrong way for them, back toward 100 or 100 plus, right? And almost immediately after a few days, not taking any time at all to retest the levels of the initial strike and closure.
There's a lot of talk about speculation that the United States may have traded oil securities to manipulate the price of oil even further. I'm going to try really hard to avoid going into the details of that, but essentially, if somebody were to come in and sell a whole bunch of oil futures, the price of oil would go down. And it looks like that may have happened, and it looks like the United States may have been behind it. Banker Bill, are you buying into this speculation at all? A lot of people are talking about this like a major red line has been crossed.
Based on the price action in oil prices in the futures market, I don't think it happened because the movement and what you're seeing and what I just mentioned about the pop in oil prices, the retracement, and then the retest is classic behavior of the financial products that are traded on the underlying of a crude oil future, right? The physical commodity. Those financial products get ahead of the physical commodity in terms of trading and speculation of price. And with it, you get a bust, basically a bust, which is exactly what we saw. And now you're seeing oil prices trend higher again in a retest. So to me, it's a classic move of what I just described, not indicative of market manipulation.
So for the edit, I'm going to bring up a chart that Banker Bill you shared with me in the notes. And in this chart, there's a giant yellow line sharp pointing upwards. That's when the price of oil went way up, and you can see it came way back down. And then all of a sudden, there's a very gradual increase now in the price of oil.
Understand that the timeline for that chart is 2 weeks. That's the entire duration.
But what you're basically saying is there was this major price pop because, of course, there was. We all of a sudden got really worried that this was now not just a single night raid. There was a sharp decline as the market decided they needed to correct for that, some of which was from the artificial short-term confidence that Trump injected into the conversation. And now, instead of freaking out again, the market is slowly trying to find equilibrium, is being much more conservative, but still the trend is upward. Do I have that right?
That's exactly right. That equilibrium is trending higher.
I don't see how this ends easily. I hope it ends as soon as possible. I do just want to ask quickly, Trump seems to be hustling to get more oil production online. Obviously, that's going to take time. We hear so much about how the United States doesn't have exactly the right refineries for American oil. I think the Trump administration also announced that the construction on one new refinery was moving forward. Is there a world in which we drill ourselves out?
No. Ridiculous to even try to say.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about the different refineries, the different grades and products, but look, we're a net exporter. That's all well and good. But oil is a globally traded commodity. And no matter what, to the extent that there's these supply limitations now in the Middle East, we're going to pay much higher prices.
And then I'm sorry to do this, Banker Bill. I promised you no hard questions, but a hard question did just occur to me, and it is in direct response to our episode about the strength of the dollar. There was, of course, this report that Iran is trying to strike a deal with China where they're willing to sell their oil to China, but it has to be in yuan as opposed to the dollar under the petrodollar umbrella. Are you worried about that?
No, I don't. No. Why should I be?
So that you don't think
Why does that bother you?
You don't think that that's sort of a major development in the United States losing reserve currency?
That would not be good, and I would expect the United States to somehow undermine that. China already undermines the petrodollar market by buying sanctioned oil from Iran. China has a whole industry of refineries where the business model is predicated on buying sanctioned oil. So to transition that to what is now an above board, quote unquote, petro yuan market would only bring that same oil into, I guess, a legal construct, which would then eliminate China's very good sanctioned oil industry.
So Iran's not saying to China, "Hey, let's take down the petrodollar." Iran, in some ways, is just saying, "Hey, let's make this official and cut out some of the paperwork, some of the money laundering."
Right. And that would hurt China's, they're called teacup refineries that specifically operate in illicitly or sanctionedly traded oil.
There was a really powerful metaphor that was used by an economist in a congressional hearing this week where they were talking about the strength of the dollar and the demand for U.S. treasuries. And she made a point very similar to yours, Banker Bill, which is that there is just no alternative out there, that we are going to keep that reserve currency status. But the danger was, and I love this, she said the United States right now is like the boyfriend, the successful city slicker boyfriend in the Hallmark Christmas movie.
Oh, no.
At some point, that treasury buyer is going to go home to their small town and fall in love with something better.
Yeah, we've all seen that movie.
And just right now, it's still June. Things are fine. The holidays are a couple months away. We don't know when Christmas is coming, but there will be a day. And it really feels like it's years away, maybe even decades away, but there will be a day when the international bond buyer decides that they're going to fall in love with somebody closer to home.
Yeah, that's a good way to make people be concerned about it or be interested in it, right? Hey, but with this, I'll tell you what happened. This move in oil prices caused the dollar to increase, right? Strengthen. Why do you think that was? Why was there a rush to dollars? Because you still have to buy oil, and oil is traded in dollars. So now I better go get some dollars.
Yeah.
They really screwed everybody on this one. I mean, anyone who's an energy importer, South Korea, UK, small East Asian countries getting screwed. Oh my God. And the airline, I just talked about jet fuel, for God's sake, in the State of the Union episode. And again, with the summer tourist and driving season still to come, it looks very precarious. Very precarious. Tread lightly and grow a garden. Grow a garden this summer.
Internationally, people are talking about Russia like they're the winners in all of this. They don't need the Strait of Hormuz. Now there's more of a demand for their illicit oil. International stuff aside, is there anybody domestically? Is there any economic sector that wins from this? Somebody's got to win, right?
Winners are on obviously energy companies, pipeline companies, capacity companies, storage companies. But there's as many, if not more, losers.
The last thing that I want to touch upon briefly, the last big headline was this Ticketmaster story. You and I both love going to a sports game. Got a big concert with Babs next week.
Oh, who are you seeing?
We're seeing FKA Twigs, but Ticketmaster. Everybody's really upset. It looked like multiple administrations had finally put an operation together that was going to hold Ticketmaster accountable, that was finally going to get us some much more reasonable prices for all of these concerts. And again, it feels like this complete and utter monopoly. It's a complete shock that everything runs on Ticketmaster. You can't get away from it. You have to go to like the tiniest little community shows to end up on something that's not Ticketmaster or some sort of secondhand market where the ticket originated on Ticketmaster. That being said, I'd be lying if I said I understood the ins and outs of this antitrust bill, but it was so disappointing to hear that right on the cusp of this going to trial, of somebody finally sticking it to Ticketmaster, of the DOJ just finally actually going to trial on somebody. A settlement was reached. The judge was not happy.
Said it was mind-boggling.
Yeah. Did he use the term mind-boggling?
I think so, yeah.
Did you have any insights here? Do you have any thoughts?
Zero surprise after Gail Slater was ousted. Telegraphed. Could have told you it was happening. If you would have put it on Kalshi, I would have said I wouldn't have bet it because it should be 100%. Or maybe I, should have. But anyway, I never looked. Look, we covered there's basically no one even working in antitrust right now. It's an administration unwilling to tackle the common consumer problems that are out there. I don't think per se that Ticketmaster's monopoly power is a problem or is a driver for high prices. I think there are many aspects of Ticketmaster's business where they provide value. The problem is that they're not doing enough to ensure that when they sell a ticket, that ticket goes in that first transaction to the ultimate attendee of the concert and not to any middleman. Never mind one middleman, but 10 or 15. And that's driving the price higher. There is insatiable demand for these events, Kobi, okay? People in the United States make a lot of money, and capacity is limited to maybe, let's say, 70,000 at most. So that I get prices are always going to be high for these things because they're in demand, once in a lifetime events for people. The problem is there's too many people sitting in the middle of Ticketmaster and the end consumer, and Ticketmaster's not doing enough to eliminate those middlemen. That's the criticism I have for the company.
Are you talking about people using bots and other means to scoop up
any of that? Yes, any of it. Any kind of that wholesaling, making a market in that. What the ultimate goal, what we would want in every, and I understand it would never happen 100% of the time, but in every transaction, the goal would be when Ticketmaster sells the ticket for the first time to whomever it is, that ticket is sold to the person who attends the event.
Right. And, and that sounds so reasonable until you remember people get sick, people have emergencies.
Say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%.
Right.
It's a lot more than that now.
Well, yeah, but what I'm trying to say is like something needs to be done about this. This is insane. These prices are way too high. They're high, the demand is high and the prices should be high, but they shouldn't be this high because of all the resale that you're talking about. But at the same time, you can't just make resale illegal.
That we could do a whole episode on that. They have to be able to reduce the number of resales of the tickets.
Right.
And so that the person, like I said, the person who buys the ticket the first time goes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. There has to be a little flexibility in that.
It always, yes, for sure. But this was never a problem in the world of physical tickets.
Right.
Right. Because you would go in person and you'd buy in advance and like everybody would queue up and get in line. Right. Even if you were going in advance for a Yankee game, if you weren't going to that day's game, you could buy advance tickets. Right. But now with the internet and with bots, especially, it's become almost easy to manipulate the market. And Ticketmaster's like, hey, we're making crazy profits. And I'm saying, hey, you deserve to make crazy profits. You do excellent stuff with putting venues together with the artists and putting on these great production shows, but you're not doing really anything about making sure that your end user, your customer, doesn't get rinsed. By all these factors, by the way, that are outside of Ticketmaster's network. It's not like Ticketmaster gets a piece of all these middlemen.
I like the physical ticket thing because on the one hand, it would suck if you had to go down to the theater or the stadium to buy the ticket again because people take a day off of work and just make that their job. But if it's physical tickets, you're going to get one resale off of that. You're not going to go then, if you want to go resell them, you're going to have to go meet that person. But, so that might be a good way of doing it.
Well, they've made it easier. The venues, the sports teams have made it easier to transfer tickets.
Right.
That's part of the challenge too, is the way to digitally transfer tickets. So hey, look, it's great that you can do that. That enabled a lot of things, but there's also detractions with that.
Yeah. I hate when you're trying to figure out the logistics of how is everybody going to get into the stadium when one person's running 15 minutes late.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. We got to figure it out. Anyway, but that's not the point. The point is the antitrust division is broke. It's a great time to do some white collar crime. It's a great time to do some monopolistic business practices. This is ridiculous and it's got to stop.
It's the best time ever to be a monopoly.
All right. Well, folks, I hope that was a good catch up on all of the economic nonsense that's been happening the last 2 weeks. I'm sorry our last episode was a little bit of a dud, but hey, we're working, folks. This is a little bit of a passion project. So we thank you so much for your patience and for sticking with it. And we saw the listens, so we know you gave it a shot. That housing episode, Banker Bill's opportunity to finally school me on why we should be paying so much more attention to New York housing, is going to hopefully happen next week. We've already rescheduled with Tegvir. Please leave us a review. Please give us those 5 stars. It is the best way to help us expand. You can reach us at YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Substack. We try to get a little bonus content out on the Substack from time to time. So if you want more Is It Bad for the Economy, I'd encourage you to follow us there. Give us a subscribe there, a like there, a comment there. And if somebody leaves us a question, we always love to answer them. So please send them to us at isitbadfortheeconomy@gmail.com or leave it at a comment somewhere. We'll try to go find it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.